Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes today. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Before we get into today's episode, I want to invite you into a little bit of a celebration that we're doing behind the scenes that we're now making public. We have officially crossed an important threshold. That threshold is our show has now been downloaded over 10,000 times. Thank you so much, you the listener, you that have supported us all this last year and a half. And we are super excited. And to celebrate, we are going to give away a pair of shoes. That's right, you heard me correctly. If you go to our website right now, www.opspodcast.com, you're going to see on our show logo, right when you come to that page, it looks like there might be a pair of Vans, perhaps. And so we want to celebrate that with you. And so we're going to give you a chance to win a brand new pair of Vans, whether you're a guy, whether you're a girl, it doesn't matter. We will buy you a brand new pair of Vans. And all you have to do is two things to enter into this contest. The first thing we want you to do is on our site, you'll notice a little tab called Connect. If you click on that, there's a little drop down that will come that you just put in your email address, your name, and in the message box, we want you to put 10,000. That's all you have to do to enter there. Second place you can enter while you're on our site still, there's a little thing called Rank the Show. And if you click on that tab, it'll take you to a place called Rank on Podchaser. Right there, you just click on that link. It'll take you right to Podchaser, and you can leave us a review by entering in some basic information on Podchaser, and you leave that review there. We'll see it there, and you get a second entry. And at the end of October, we will put everybody's name into a drawing, and we will pick a lucky winner. So go do that right now. If you're interested, please stay tuned for the show, because here we go.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Hey, welcome into Other People's Shoes. I am your host, Neil Matthews. I almost said of course there, which would have maybe cost me $1 from my wife. So we're going to try to eliminate that word from our vernacular on the show. But welcoming my guest today, she is from the great state of Illinois. Now, I got to remember back for me, when I remember back to I remember back to 2005. This is my remember when it comes to Illinois. Okay, so indulge me just for a minute. I believe it was April 4th, actually. So it was 4/4/05. And on that date, I believe, if I'm not wrong on this, somebody fact check me, of course. Send us an email, send us a text, whatever you want to do. But the University of North Carolina, under Roy Williams, won their second national championship against, you guessed it, the Fighting Illini. Now, that took place in St. Louis, of course, but, just a little hop, skip, and a jump from where our guest is currently. She is in Chicago. Now, I got to ask, are we a Bears fan? Are we a Cubs fan? Are we a White Sox fan? Are we a Blackhawks fan? What kind of fan are we?
I'm a Chicago fan.
So it doesn't matter. Like Bulls even. I forgot about the Bulls. How could I forget the Bulls in Chicago? Shame on me for that, man. Welcome in our guest today, Sarah Davis. Sarah, how are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Well, I always say better than I deserve because that's just fun to say. And it sounds a little cliche per se, but I am. I really feel like I deserve nothing. And I somehow get these blessings in life. And I don't know why, but I do. So anyway, there we are.
Gratitude daily. It's a thing.
Right. I like that. Gratitude daily. See, I learned that from you. I'm gonna steal that. How can I find gratitude today? So Sarah, welcome into the show. We got to get, of course, this most important question out of the way. Are you ready for this? Drum roll, please. Would you?
Yeah.
Are you
Drum
sure?
roll.
All right. Sarah, what style of shoes do you love to wear?
Do I love to wear? I absolutely love to wear heels, like boot heels. Those are my thing.
Boot heels.
Boot heels. For sure. Not like the tall ones. I like the shorter, I have this gray pair that I wear with jeans, leggings, everything that I can find that matches them.
All right.
I love them so much.
So we're in boot heels today.
Boot heels.
Okay. All right. I'm not even sure how to come to grips with that, but boot heels, here we go. Yeah, it's a fun show. That's why we always ask that important question, because again, we're in your shoes today, right? So
Yes.
with that being said, here we go. Let's see this work. Now we are officially in these boot heels. So there we
Yes.
go. Now we even had a theme song to preview your boot heels, or to
give you a little bit more confidence.
to give us some more confidence as I'm walking around Chicago in boot heels with my Carolina jersey on from 2005. So speaking of that, being in Chicago, what is the best thing about living in Chicago? Like, I've never been out there. Like, what's the best thing about the city that I should know about if I was going to come tour there? Where would you take us?
So the most cliche answer is food, of course. There's this Italian restaurant that I go to. It's absolutely amazing. It's on the west side, kind of by the UIC pavilion. And they have some of the best veal tortellini I've ever had. It's absolutely amazing. And they have their own wine shipped in. So food, of course, but for me, I'm kind of, I love graffiti. So graffiti art in Chicago is absolutely one of a kind. And there is a neighborhood called Pilsen. And there's a specific block in Pilsen that is just all of the businesses have graffiti on it. And it's just absolutely beautiful. It's amazing. And it's just, I just absolutely love it. Honestly, that's what I have taken some of my friends who have come to Chicago to go see, is the graffiti. And they're all like, this is so cool. I've never seen anything like that, especially if you're not from a big city. You wouldn't even know that that's something that would catch your attention like that. But it's just absolutely amazing, this artwork that people do. And it's like unnamed art, which is even more of a majesty in it of itself. So, yeah.
Why does the fact that it's unnamed art, why does that resonate with you so much?
I think because I kind of, in my opinion, I feel like art is kind of a service to the public. And when you don't attach your name to something, it's in my opinion, it's like community service. It's like you're doing it without the praise. You don't need the praise. You're just putting up this beautiful art piece for people to admire. And the fact that you can sit back and you could be the artist and stand across the street and just watch people who stop and look at your artwork on this wall. And just watching their reaction to your art is good enough to you. You don't need it to be attached to your name. You just love what perspective you give to other people in that moment. So
I love that. There's a lyric in a song that I came across recently. It says, "How many likes is my life worth?"
Seriously.
And when you're saying that, that's what resonated with me too. When you make that statement that that so much of our life is based around these likes, these comments, these shares, these whatevers, right? And so what you're saying is these artists in Chicago, if I'm hearing you right, is basically saying, hey, I don't need the byline. I don't need the look at me moment. I don't need to share this 70 times with, 80 different people on Instagram.
Right.
I don't need that. I have that validation that people are coming to see it and enjoy it and appreciate it. I love that. I love that a lot, actually. So, so getting into our first real good question, you gave us a date, which I think is interesting when we get to it, but you gave us the date. October 19th, 2012 is your specific date that you gave us of your what happened when. And why that date for you?
So that was October 19th is my birthday. And in 2012, I turned 22. That sounds cool. 2012, I turned 22. Sorry.
I feel like that's a T Swift song. No?
Right.
I know you're not going to sing it because you're probably not a Taylor Swift fan, but I have a 13-year-old and I don't even know how it goes. When I was 22. Yeah, I don't know. I might have even sang that wrong. I'm probably going to get letters about that. But anyway, back to you. Why that date?
So on my 22nd birthday, I believe it was a very big turning point for me in my life because I basically at that point decided to leave an abusive relationship. I decided to go back home, and I decided to take responsibility for what was happening in my life instead of just all of the things happening to me. Now I was becoming responsible for all of that. And I was re-envisioning who I was and getting to know myself on a much deeper level. You know, I was going through, I didn't know it at the time. I had no idea what self-awareness was, but I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, who are you? Because who I'm looking at is not who I want to be the rest of my life. Like, what are we doing here? Let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out and let's move forward. So
at 22, you discovered that?
Yeah,
I mean, if I'm gonna pick on that a little bit, which I'm not. I mean, it's your story, it's your event, but I'm just wondering. Like, I'm thinking myself at 22, and I'm thinking back to when I was 22. I don't know if I would have had what you're declaring, the self-awareness that you had. So can you talk about that with me? Like what led to those events? Because it's not like you wake up on your 22nd birthday and was like, okay, what am I going to do today? Okay, I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to, maybe you're in Chicago, so hey, I'm going to go down, check out the graffiti. You know, I'm feeling kind of down. Right. I need maybe a pick me up.
What are my friends doing?
Yeah. What am I going to do today? You know, who's going to wish me a happy birthday? Maybe you're getting some social media posts about, hey, Sarah, happy birthday, whatever. But what woke you up to the fact of, I can't live like this any longer?
So from 19 to 22, like before my birthday, a couple months before my birthday, I was in an abusive relationship. So, and it was to the point to where I'm actually from northern Chicago. So it's a smaller town that's about 30 minutes outside of Wisconsin. And I grew up there, and at this point in my life, I had found myself living in the hood of Chicago. So I was in Inglewood, specifically 67th and South Halsted was the main area that I was situated in. And I had gone through abuse. I was living in the hood, going through survival of the fittest mode. It was it's a very intense place. And then I was at this point to where my ex had been incarcerated, and I believe like a month before my birthday, I went to see him for the very last time. And it was kind of a very surreal moment for me because I was sitting there and I've never spoken to anybody in the jail before. So if you've never gone through this, it's you go in, you sign in, they line you up, and then they take you through this like concrete corridor, at least at Cook County. It's like a concrete corridor, and then they let you into this concrete room, and they lock the door behind you, and there's just seats, and then the mirror, the clear mirror between you, and then the inmates will come in whenever they're ready, whenever they have them lined up to come in and see you. And I don't know. So this is kind of crazy. I don't know if anyone has ever seen, who's listening to this, has ever seen The Goodfellas. So there's a part in The Goodfellas where she's going to see her husband in jail, and she sees his mistress's name on the guest list, but like right before her to go and see him. And that exact thing happened to me. Like, I knew this girl, I've met her before, and I saw her name on the list, and I didn't tell him, but I remember going and sitting there and him coming in, and I was just like, I asked him if he had anything to tell me. So we were talking. He started breaking down crying. He had mentioned the girl, and then he showed me that he had got my name tattooed on the left side of his outer palm of his hand. So he kind of put his hand on the table so that I could see that he got my name tattooed while he was in jail on his hand. And he was crying, doing his story and everything. And I was kind of numb at this point. And I just remember getting in my car and leaving. And I remember driving home and thinking, like, first of all places to get my name tattooed on you, you got it on the outside palm of your hand, which you've hit me with numerous times. So I can only imagine you standing over me in the future and being like, this hand is like made for you, or some weird shit like that, because that's something that would have come out of his mouth. And then I remember sitting there thinking, like, all of the crying that he's doing to try and get me to come back and trying to get me to fall for this. And I've done it so many times before. And it was just, it was such a crazy realization to go through. So the month after that, I had been going through all of this in my mind. So turning 22 was, for me, was a pivotal moment. It was a new year in my life. It was a new me. It was, what are you going to do from 22 to 23? Are you going to continue being in the situation that you were in? Are you going to continue being okay with like going on the block? Are you going to continue being okay with doing the things that you thought that you had to do to make money? Are you going to continue writing this man who doesn't care about you? Like, no, you need to sit down with yourself and figure out what it is that you want. And that was not in the radar of who I wanted to be in my life. So.
Wow. So let's go back a couple of steps if we can. You okay with that? First off, thanks for sharing that. That's some tough stuff, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Some really tough stuff. So one thing I want to talk about is you mentioned him being incarcerated. He's in jail. Mm-hmm. Can you share why he was in jail?
Yeah, he got locked up for armed robbery.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And so
he got sentenced to, I believe it was 6 years. I don't even know. My family knows more than I do.
Sure. Now, you were with him, obviously not with him at the time of the armed robbery, but you were in a relationship with him at the time of the armed robbery. Okay.
Yes.
And how long were you guys together during that time?
It was like 2.5, 3 years was the total amount of time that we were together.
And when did he start hitting you during that time frame?
I think it was probably like 8 months to a year of being together. But right off the bat, it was kind of crazy because my family didn't like him at all, obviously. And I was so blind by why they didn't like him that I really did everything that I could to try and have him prove them wrong. Like, and I think about it all the time, like, why would you stay in that type of relationship? And me in particular, because everybody is individual in this type of situation, in domestic abuse. So me in particular, being as stubborn and prideful and all of the things that I was as a young woman, young girl, I should say, I wasn't even a woman at that time. I let that get in the way of seeing the reality of things. And I just wanted him to prove my family so wrong. And so that was why the first time it happened, we were on the block and I had said something to his brother that he didn't like. And he smacked me. And I remember just being like, just happened. But I just remember being like, what just happened? And I just kind of went numb. And we, had sex after that. And it was just kind of something that was like swept under the rug. He was like, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And I, believed it. I was naive to how the things work. So that was, the first time.
So like eight months into your relationship.
Yeah.
Right? 8 months into your relationship, he strikes you for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Does that begin a pattern and a series of events that takes place after that where it happened like regularly or every so often, or was there triggers that you discovered that would do to set him off?
Yeah, it was more every so often, and it was more of a I think in his view, it was more of like a disciplinary thing to him. It was more of like one time I remember he had come back from Wisconsin and I had a place in Bridgeport in Chicago. It's just a small Hispanic neighborhood. And he came back and that morning I had found some texts on his phone from multiple different females. And I let him sleep, but when he woke up, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, you just got back here and you were supposed to go, and he was going to like this Christian camp and all of these things. I was like, you were supposed to come back here and be like, you told me that things were going to be different. What is this? And I remember him being so pissed off that he choked me. He was choking me in the kitchen up against the wall. And I remember just breaking down crying and asking him, like, why do you do this to me? What is going on? So I think it was more in his eyes, like a disciplinary type of thing. And for me, I knew that that's why a lot of times I stayed quiet in certain situations, because I didn't want to fight. But sometimes it was like when you're silenced for so long and everything just comes out at once and you don't know how to communicate properly, like that's when the fights would break out. So
did you ever feel like his property in any way?
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when you're retelling, of your events and leading up to his incarceration and things like that, that you were on the block. I'm not familiar with that term.
Sorry.
Like, I know Jenny from the Block. Like, I know that song, and maybe I'm trying to be
basically Jenny from the Block.
Too flippant with that. But what does that mean? Help me with that.
So the Block is basically just a street. It's like like 67th and Halstead is actually more of like a major intersection in Inglewood. So mine would have been like, I don't know. I used to hang out on 63rd and Normal. So that it is considered the block, like whatever block you and your family or you and your guys or you and your people hang out on, that's the block. So.
Gotcha. So it's just a place where you hang out.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. All right. I was thinking something totally different.
Yeah.
So it's like probably not what she meant.
But I mean, you can even say associate it with just like, because when J-Lo sings Jenny from the Block, she's basically Jenny like from the neighborhood, Jenny from the hood that you know. So
she's that same Jenny.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. So you're that same Sarah. Okay. So why do you think these things were allowed to happen to you? The abuse, the obviously I don't know if you ever lived in fear. I would imagine you probably did a little bit. Maybe some eggshell walking took place. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to put myself in those. What are we in again? Those boot heels.
Yes.
That's what I think it is. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm trying to put myself in those boot heels right now, and I'm thinking to myself, did you ever once think, why am I allowing this to happen to me?
Multiple times. Yeah, multiple times. I think that I was fighting for something that wasn't. I thought I was fighting for something that wasn't worth fighting for. So for me in particular, I didn't grow up like someone who was dependent on other people. I was more of an independent person. It's funny because my mom actually just said this to me recently. She's like, of both you and your sister, of the people who I thought that would get into a situation like that, she's like, I thought it would be your sister more because you're like, you've always been the strong, independent person. And I told my mom, I was like, well, maybe it happened to me because I would have been able to get out of it. I wasn't going to be stuck in that situation forever, but I was able to learn the lessons that I needed to learn at that point in time. So when you say like, why did I stay or why did this happen or why did I allow it? I think that I honestly believe that it was just my pride on proving my family wrong, because I didn't talk to my family during this time and I wanted so badly to be able to have a relationship with them again. But I knew that unless this man grew up and did the things that I saw in him that he could do, that I would never be able to have that relationship if I stayed with him. And I wanted to stay with, like, I genuinely loved him and I think it was because of when I first met him, throughout our relationship, he was such a courageous person. I mean, the way that this man could tell stories, like if he utilized that in a non-manipulative and narcissistic way, he could do great things. And the way that he could capture people's attention. And I just found it mesmerizing because I saw what he could do. But the danger in that is you might be able to see somebody's potential, but and it's said all the time, if they don't see it, it's not going to go anywhere. They have to see it within themselves. So I really think that I was fighting for something that just wasn't there.
Yeah, I wonder about that, because going forward, do you think that ever changed how you started looking at people going forward, or how did that view in any way affect you?
Which particular view?
Well, just the view of seeing all this potential in him, right? And really seeing him wasted away. And then when you're around maybe that next person, whether it be a guy or a friend or a whomever, I don't know, you know what relationship you want to attach to that or label you want to put on that. But did you ever once think, here we go again?
Like, oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. And talk about that maybe.
Yeah. So I had a relationship probably like a year outside of not speaking to my ex anymore. And I saw the same thing happening with him. And it was like, he could not understand why I left. For the life of him, he had no idea why. And I just told him, I'm like, we're just not going to work. I'm like, there's things that you need to work on that I just cannot help you with. I will not be able to help you with. Like, this is something that you have to want and you need to do within yourself. And if you don't do it, then you're just going to be in the same place your whole life. And that might be fine with you, but that's not how I want to live mine. So it's definitely affected the way that I communicate with people. It's affected the way that I view people. It's affected the way that I listen to people and explain themselves. Because I do think that there's a difference between victimhood and like survivor mentality. I think that you can be a victim in some respect, but you should be a survivor. Because even the difference when you say these words, it makes you feel different. Like, I never consider myself a victim. I'm a survivor. Like, I realized that I needed to take responsibility. And I can see when people are not like that. And I just don't associate with people like that anymore, because I don't necessarily have a tolerance for it, you know? I don't know. I can talk to people like that and try to guide them, but I'm not going to be the one to like hold their hand and be like, you can do it. And them just be like, I can't forever. Like, cause some people just will never figure it out. So yeah.
No, I think that's great, but I'm wondering about this. So you're 22, you wake up, you're like, I'm done, I'm out. So now, I mean, you've had 8 birthdays since then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did the math on that. So
yeah.
High five for doing math. Yeah. High five for doing math on that. It was pretty easy math, but I did the math on that. So 8 years from now. So do you ever stop now on your birthday and say, okay, wow, look at where I was 8 years ago?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of bad at that. I mean, I do it more now because I'm writing a book, but I've always been my hardest critic. So sometimes I have friends that remind me, like, you have to realize how far you've actually come, you know. But I do think that everybody should take their birthday as a reflection period. So I do reflect every October 19th, and I look myself in the mirror and say, who are you now? Who do you want to be a year from now? You know, I've kind of built that process when I would turn 22. But yeah, I am definitely my hardest critic. Sometimes I forget about what I've gone through to get here. But yeah, it's a difficult one.
What do you think you learned most about yourself, not only on that date, but then going forward, coming out of that experience?
That I am a survivor for sure. I will survive. I don't care what the situation is. I will survive. And I will never cower to the circumstances around me, because I can't control you cannot control the circumstances around you. You can only control the way that you react to them and the situations that you put yourself in within those circumstances. So a lot of times, like recently, I've been fighting with myself with some of the things that I did while I was in the hood and during that time, and what I did to like make sure I could eat and all of the things. And I've been kind of battling with myself, but then I have to, take myself back to who I was in that moment. And I did what I had to do to survive. So then it's just kind of more of an understanding, and I get more peace in that. You
mentioned doing some things that maybe you regret, right? During those days, during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your biggest regret? You talk about doing some certain things to get food and things like that. What did that involve, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I don't think it's so again, another cliche thing, but I wholeheartedly don't believe in holding on to regrets per se. I think that like I did escorting, prostitution, whatever you want to call it. I did that certain times when I needed money. And it was kind of interesting for me when I look at it, because it was, I did the people that I worked with, right? Because I always looked at it as a business transaction. So the people that I worked with were usually older and they were more established. So like business owners, all of these things. And it was an escape for me at that time. It was kind of like a way for me to not be who I was in the moment. So they never knew anything about me. They didn't know my name. The only thing that they knew was that I did have a man back home. So that we okay, that needs to be said. And so that was something that I would do. But at the same time, it might be something that some people would say that they regret. I don't regret doing it because, first of all, I met a lot of really cool people during that time frame. And it was also a way for me to understand how I operate within myself too. Like the fact that I consider that a business transaction and not something that I should be ashamed of. It was something that I had to do. And people would say, well, you could go and you could get a job and you could work at a restaurant and bus tables. I did all of that. But the fact of the matter was I was constantly in and out of those jobs because my situation wouldn't allow me to be a steady employee. So I couldn't blame my employers for not wanting to employ me for so long. So I had to do what I had to do at that point in time. I also did things I used to sell drugs out of a trap house. And again, people would be like, oh my God, you're a drug dealer. I'm like, oh my God, these people chose to buy it. So I don't know. It's kind of in my head at that point in time, I was thinking everything of as a business and how am I going to be able to eat and where am I going to sleep today? I didn't have the luxury of thinking about tomorrow. I had to think about today because there were some days I didn't eat at all, and a lot of the times I slept in my car. Sometimes I had to go from neighborhood to neighbor to neighbor, and people wouldn't let me sleep on their couch. That's the reality of the situation. So yeah, I don't, there's that. That's funny.
Is that the first time you really talked about that stuff?
No, I've talked about it before. I just, sometimes I ramble on and I and I'm like, okay, well, there we are.
No, I just was curious. I mean, you shared some pretty intimate stuff there. So that's what I was wondering. Sometimes laughter is it's our way of trying to well, there's nothing else to do but laugh about that sometimes, right?
Of course.
Now, granted, for me personally, which it's not about me, but there's nothing funny, obviously, about selling drugs, right? Mm-hmm. We live in a culture, right, where people like to say, well, let's say no to drugs, right? We have the DARE program back when I was a kid and, everything like that. But the part that I guess I was not curious about, but just wondering about was, what's the evolution that takes place where you're making these choices where you're basically selling yourself and selling drugs to make ends meet, to provide for you, to get the necessities that you need in life, right? Mm-hmm. Where did that happen?
So the first time I ever escorted, I was, I couldn't pay my rent. I was working And
how old are you? If you don't
I
mind me asking?
I was 19. I believe.
So obviously before you were 22, right?
Yeah, I believe I was 19. Yeah, I'm super bad at specific times. 19 or 20. This is the first time that I moved to a portion of the hood, and I was working at a pizza place that used to be right next to my the college or university that I used to go to. So I was working there, but I wasn't making enough to make my rent. So that was the first time I did it. I had a girlfriend back in the day who I grew up with, and I remember her mentioning this particular resource, I'll call it, that she used to be able to do this herself. She was going to law school, and she was like, she was telling me about what she was doing and all of the things. And I remembered that, and that's what I ended up doing. I was like, okay, I need to make rent. So here we go. But that time taught me a lot too, because I was more in a pinch, and I needed money now. So the way that I handled that situation, I would never do. I learned from that. I would have never done it the same way again. And I didn't. But yeah, that was the first time that I ever did that. I needed rent. I needed rent money. And then graduating, that's a horrible word, but graduating to going into the trap house, I think that was more of just like an evolution of what was happening to me in that time. I don't think it wasn't something that I consciously chose. It was like, something that we did to make money. So it wasn't necessarily like malicious by any means. None of it was.
Who's the we?
Huh?
Who's the we?
Me and my ex at that time.
You and your ex. Okay.
We'll call him Melvin.
Right. Melvin?
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Melvin. All right. So Melvin, the same dude that's in jail for their armed robbery.
Yes.
Same guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So here's my question. You've alluded to the fact that now were you doing prostitution and stuff like that when you were with Melvin?
Yes.
Okay. So here's my question. Why are you mad at him for the girl text messages that are coming in, the female text messages coming in when you go to see him in the jail and there's the girl's name? Why are you mad at him when you're doing this?
I don't think I was necessarily mad about and I wasn't prostituting at that time. So I don't think I was mad about that. I was mad at the fact that he lied to me as to what he was doing in Chicago, because I wasn't in Chicago when he got locked up. We had been in Michigan together, and he decided to take my car and drive back to Chicago with one of his buddies. And he left me in Michigan with no car, basically with his mom, who was a crazy, I can't even get on that train. So he left me with his mom, took my car, and I was basically stranded in Michigan. And I had only been there for a month or two, so I didn't really know anybody. And I think that finding out about her just added on to the lies that were being told, because he really went down there to move her into his cousin's house, and he had a master plan of robbing these people, and they ended up, whatever happened. So I don't necessarily think that it was the women. I think that it was the lying about it, because I was always up front and forward. And actually, he was the one who encouraged me to do it in the first place. So I think, yeah. I never lied about it. I never lied about any of the things that I did. So
that's insane to me that he would encourage you to do that.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
To me. I can't even fathom that. Not even close. There's nothing that can make me understand that.
It was a very toxic relationship. So
sounds like it.
Yeah.
So Sarah, I would just as we begin to kind of wrap up today, what is one thing that you're absolutely certain of?
That I'm absolutely certain of. My mind said nothing. I'm absolutely certain that I'm not certain of anything. I think that perspective should be ever changing. I think that, well, I guess that I'm absolutely certain that my faith in God and my spirituality, I'm absolutely certain in that at this point in time. But I do think that things are ever changing, and I think that perspectives should always be allowed to change and move forward. And if you don't allow yourself to open up your mind to different perspectives, then you don't have to agree with that perspective by any means. But if you just don't allow your brain and your mind the ability to at least consider different perspectives, and change in that way, then you're really doing yourself a disservice, in my opinion, in my point of view. So I guess that the only thing that's certain to me right now is my faith, but everything else is everything else is movement. So
what's one thing, as we, again, this is my last question, but what's one thing you would want others to learn from you personally?
It's not about where you've been, it's where you are. There's so much in this society today that really, honestly, is part of the driving force for me writing this book. It's to show that every single person goes through a time in their life that is not the top of their choices that they've made. And it's just to judge somebody on the things that they used to do in situations that you may or may not understand is not the way that you should look at a person. You should look at a person and see who they are today. What are you doing? What are you trying to do? What are you striving for? And that's where you should decide whether you want to listen to that person or you don't. I think that is very much overlooked in our society today. And it's kind of mind-boggling to me on how we even got to this point. So yeah, that's that.
So how do we fix that though? Right? How do we fix that from your standpoint?
I think that people need to, man, that's a like layered response, but I think it comes down to people just need to be more open. I really do. I think people's perspectives need to be not so concrete. I believe that people hold very tightly to their beliefs because they sometimes feel like that's all they have. And sometimes it's something that they grew up with. Sometimes it's something that they were taught. But until you're able to expand your mind outside of that and gain different perspectives. And I always tell people, if you're going to have such a strong conviction on something, you should be able to recite the opposing conviction as well. Like there's no way that you can have a constructive argument and not understand what that person's truly talking about. So I think that knowing that not everybody is going to see things the way that you see, but that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're not somebody worth talking to. So conversation is key and vital right now. And everybody's just screaming in a small room. It's great. A lot of noise. A lot of noise.
I love that analogy of everyone screaming in a room and there's just a lot of noise.
A lot of noise.
I think right now, I love what you're saying on that. That really resonates with me too, is that this idea that we don't really know. One, I don't think we know people's stories. Mm-hmm. So then we immediately look at the book, mm-hmm. the outside cover of the book, obviously their body, their eyes, their hair, their whatevers, and we immediately start judging. Like, I know where they've been. Mm-hmm. I know what's going on with them. And it's like, well, do you though? Why don't we crack open that book and go to, chapter 8 of Sarah's life story and read about what she was doing, on the block, what she was doing in the flop house, what she was doing in
Trap house.
Those situations. Trap house. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you helping me with some urban terminology there. I grew up in the suburbs. Clearly, I'm a suburbs kid apparently from the sound of it. So, Sarah, as we wrap up today, I want to give you a final thought, and then we'll play a game together. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, final thought is yours. What would you want us to know, and what would you just anything? You get the final say here.
So I am currently, I've stated before, I'm writing a book. So if anyone is interested in anything that I've spoken about here today, or just wants to, learn more, dive into what I'm currently doing, you can follow me on Instagram at Aspiring Sarah D. My podcast will be launching again, and the first episode should be out on this coming Wednesday. And you can go to @aspiringsarahd.com. I will be having it up and running by the end of the day today. So yeah, there we go.
We, of course, will link all of that in our show notes. So, yeah, go and check that out if you're interested in that, for sure. So we play this game at the end of our show. It's this fun little cup here. I don't know if you can see if it's coming across okay. It is amazing light blue, and inside here there is a die. You can probably hear that even. So I'm going to roll this on your behalf because you're not in Oregon. You're in Chicago. It's fun to say. You got number 4, and you can see that. Look at that. Look at that. We can see that right there.
Ooh,
see
there
that?
We go.
You did get number 4. So there's proof now. People don't think I'm just making up numbers as I go along here. So it's our wonderful game we like to call Senseless. So Sarah, your question is this. What sound or noise do you love to hear?
Rain.
Boy, you didn't even hesitate. Like, why rain?
It helps me sleep. Yeah, and rain to me is like super refreshing. It's kind of like a wash away at the same time. I just love the sound of rain. I used to be an avid runner, and I used to get like that whole runner's high that runners talk about. And my favorite was to run in the rain. I would wait until it rained, and I'm like, yes, I'm going for a run.
So growing up in Oregon, you know how many times, and being a former runner, I still think an active runner in some respects. I have a lot of running stuff still, a lot of running trophies over in the closet. But one thing I hated to do in Oregon is run in the rain. And so for you to tell me that you would wait to run in the rain, to me, again, it's just like,
yeah,
we don't have a sound effect worthy enough. We don't have a sound effect worthy enough for my mind being exploded right now because I absolutely despise running in the rain. Why do you like running in the rain so much? This is so new and profound for me.
And it's funny because a lot of runners tell me that too. They're like, I hate running in the rain. What are you talking about? Running in the rain to me was just like, man, I don't even know. It was, first of all, you don't get super hot when you run in the rain. I have a very big problem when I run and I get super hot. My face is red and it just bothers me. So running in the rain is just like a temperature even keel for me. And then feeling the water just rushing over my face and my clothes and my hair getting wet, and just sometimes running against the rain, it's more of like an adrenaline thing because you really have to push yourself to get through that wind and all of the elements that are coming at you. And I think that it just, my mind just lost itself in that particular climate. So I absolutely love it. Love the rain.
Well, that's great. Absolutely. We love to hear that. So, Sarah, thanks so much for coming on. We really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed myself a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. And guys, I just want to call your attention to this as we kind of wrap up today. And that's this idea of, again, going back to it. Do we really know the person we're standing in front of? Or in this case, do we know the person we're talking with? Now, Sarah and I didn't meet until just moments ago, and I feel like she gave us a little bit of piece of herself, a little nugget. The nugget I'm going to take away is this idea of, let's hear different perspectives. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, like, we didn't like pay her to say that. We didn't like slip her some, extra show benefits or anything like that because we don't have those things. But it's so great when we look at a different perspective than we've never thought about before. And I would just challenge you on that today as you leave here. as we take off these heel boot shoes that we were just wearing. I want you to think about that. I want you to ask yourself, where's my perspective at? And am I really hearing other sides of you? Again, you don't have to agree with them. You don't have to even like them. But are you hearing them out from a standpoint of saying, oh, okay, that's where you're coming from. Okay, that makes sense at least. And maybe it doesn't even make sense, but at least hear them out enough. So just want to remind you of that. Of course, stay tuned till next week when we get to walk in other people's shoes. Thank you so much to our guest, Sarah Davis. One more time, just want to say thank you so much to her and for giving us some moments today. Guys, a lot of great takeaways there. Super excited that we had an opportunity to sit with her. Speaking of opportunities to sit with people, stay tuned till next week. Here's a great opportunity of walking across a bridge. What do we mean by that? Well, here's a little sneak peek of that.
Tension is hard for me. I really struggle with tension and in relationships and everything. And I have a friend who's really good with tension. And she brought up a point how arrows need tension for aiming. And you can't successfully, wield a bow and arrow if you don't have tension. So, but you have to know how to use it too. You can't just pull back and get as much attention and let it fly. You've got to learn how to use it and how to study it and how to, get the trajectory from it too. So that's something I've been working through a lot.
That is right. We're going to be sitting down with a very good friend of mine, fellow podcaster. She has a podcast of her own called Bridge of the Faithful. You're going to hear more about that next week. So stay tuned for that. That, of course, will be available Wednesday to you at www.opspodcast.com. That, of course, being home base for us, our new redesigned website. And if you haven't heard already, we're doing a little contest this month called a free pair of shoes. That's what we're calling it. Actually, we're just calling it our shoe giveaway. So if you're interested in that, we'd love for you to go to our connections page on our website. There you can fill out a form. Just put in the message box 10K or 10,000. And of course, we will get you entered. You can also enter with a second entry. Of course, we're limiting it to 2 entries per person. Either leave us a review on Podchaser or leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts. Either place will get you 2 entries into our contest, and we're super excited to give away a brand new pair of Vans tennis shoes. So if you'd like to be a part of that, of course, go to our website, www.opspodcast.com. That, of course, is a great place to go to see the store, to do the donation page, to see all of the guest appearances that we've been on, and of course, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All those links are available for you there as well. Just with all that being said, we're super excited about the shoe giveaway. Go be a part of that. But until we get to next week, just remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. On behalf of executive producer Garrett and myself, Neil Matthews, thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.